Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm also a neuropsychologist, and I'm also the father of a couple of ADHD kids. Well, actually, they're adults now, and I'm also I just got word from my audio engineer that I'm making noise, so good. Anyway, and I'm also married into a whole family of ADHD folks, which I guess means makes for exciting Thanksgivings. Okay, I started last week talking about just some general tips, stuff I've collected over the years that are helpful for ADHD parents, and this is session 2 with a few more. And one of the things you have to understand is that your ADHD child is not handicapped in the traditional way, that they can't function as well as neurotypicals. They can in certain settings. They have a brain that's a little bit different. It does things a little bit, sometimes a little bit better, honestly, than a neurotypical kid. They're typically more creative. They typically see more possibilities. They do these kind of things where you are doing unique problem solving kinds of things. They do actually a little better than neurotypical kids. But they have this problem that their brain is not really designed for the settings that they have to function in, particularly school. For an ADHD kid, 6 hours of sitting still, just listening, not saying anything, that's torture. And so a lot of times they get into trouble, mostly because they just respond impulsively. And after a while, they tell the answer before the teacher wants anybody to say the answer, or so on. Okay, one of the side effects of being ADHD is that you get a lot of criticism. Some studies have estimated that an ADHD child gets about 70 critical comments a day. This is teachers, parents, neighbors, other kids, da-da-da. And by age 12, they have had 20,000 more critical comments than a neurotypical kid. That is not without impact on anybody. But for an ADHDer, it makes you doubt yourself. It causes some difficulties because you expect people to be criticizing, so then you get more sensitive to rejection. There's even a syndrome called rejection sensitive dysphoria. And basically it's overreacting to implied criticism, not even necessarily real criticism, just because they get so much of it all of the time. So that means for an ADHD parent or a parent of an ADHD child, you're going to be a little more careful about being critical when, there's no real win to being critical. There are all kinds of studies. There's a thing called the Lasota, I think it's principle, it might be ratio, doesn't really matter, but it's that the idea that in a work environment, you need 4 or 5 positive comments for every single critical comment. That's to make things function well, instead of people having their feelings hurt and that sort of stuff. With an ADHD kid, I would guess, although I have no research, that the ratio should be even higher, like 7 or 8 for every critical comment. And you should think about, one of the things that you've got to watch out for is with an ADHD child, you could be making a critical comment every 2 seconds. I mean, I had one family in, and I swear the mother never stopped criticizing the kid the entire time. It was just continuous. No, sit still, quit squirming. Come on, put your hands down. But it was I was getting tired of it. And she wasn't even directing it at me. But that's one of the things. You have to pick your spots. You have to pick what you're working on. You have to decide that you're not going to try to cure everything. You've got to be working on specific areas. It's like if you're a sports coach, and you're a baseball coach, say, you don't try to, in the first day of practice, try to get everybody, catching, throwing, and hitting, and expect that they're going to be doing it really well. And the same thing with ADHD kids, is you have to pick your spots. What are we going to work on, say, this month even? We're going to work on the getting up morning routine, and that's all we're going to work on. We're going to let everything else kind of go. We're just going to, but, not so anybody gets hurt or anything, but just that you've picked up an area to focus on. And that, combined with being sensitive to your positive and negative comments, makes life a lot easier. And you find that it gets smoother without you even actually doing anything else. As an ADHD parent, or I keep saying that, but what I really mean is the parent of an ADHD kid, because there are ADHDers who have ADHD children, of course. So anyway, but with ADHD, you have to teach more, than you do with a neurotypical kid. You have to teach them how to compensate for working memory problems, and how to use their problem-solving skills to make, say, doing their homework more comfortable, and how to use the Pomodoro method. That is, just work for 30 minutes with a timer. When the timer goes off, you take 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever, to get a drink of water, maybe do some exercises, or just go outside and breathe some fresh air. And then you come back and do 30 minutes more. Okay. They need to learn all those kinds of things, because they're not going to be able to sit still for 4 hours to do all the homework. And Lord knows kids today get tons of homework. It's funny, when I was a kid, the teachers had to deal with the mimeograph machine and stuff like that. So you didn't get more than the basic minimum of homework. But now they can just push the button and get 20 copies, and so they get a lot more homework. Okay, so I just alienated every teacher in the crowd, I'm sure. But basically what you're teaching them is how to compensate for their ADHD mind in a setting that's designed for neurotypical minds. And that's, there's a big difference. The other thing about ADHDers, and the thing that sometimes confuses people, is that anything they like, they really do well at. There's all sorts of examples. Like problem solving. Give an ADHDer 2 or 3 paper clips, a rubber band, and an eraser or something, and watch what happens. Watch what they make. Watch what they come up with. I talked about this, I think, a little last time, but that's creativity. Okay. I know my son used to do all sorts of interesting things with, just junk stuff in the drawer, plastic paper clips and a metal paper clip, and 2 rubber bands, and I don't know what all else, but and you get something, usually with something that shot things, but they can do tons of things if they like it. He could sit there for hours and just play around with those things. Give him a book, not so much, but okay. So the other thing, or another thing you need to remember with your ADHD child, is that they are basically 3 years in maturity level behind neurotypicals. Okay, so they are in a grade with 12-year-olds, and but their emotional development is basically at the 9-year level. And this becomes real significant when they get to be teenagers and they want their driver's license. So you've got a kid who's 16, but he's got the maturity level of a 13-year-old, and he wants a Mustang for his birthday or something. Uh, that's you really have to make sure that you pay attention to how he drives and that sort of stuff. And I did it with my kids. Make them take you out for your driver's exam, and if they don't pass yours, don't worry about what they do with the driver's ed. In my part of the country, the driver's ed was usually the assistant football coach, so it wasn't necessarily real high level training that they got. Uh, okay, working memory. We talk a lot about that in in neuropsychology, which is what I primarily do. But they also talk about it for ADHDers, because working memory is a real weakness. Working memory is, I've sometimes called it the etch-a-sketch memory. It's you're trying to remember something just until you get it done. You're not trying to remember it forever. Uh, but then, like the etch-a-sketch, once you've written it, you pull up the thing and it goes away. Well, for ADHD, and that's just like voice instructions. ADHDers have a problem with that. I don't know, like if you've ever told your ADHD child to, I want you to go up to your room, I want you to make the bed, I want you to pick up your dirty clothes, put them in the laundry basket, and put your socks back in the sock drawer. And then you go upstairs 30 minutes later, and he's playing video games, and he's just made his bed, and that's it. Well, guess what? That's working memory. The other stuff just went away. By the time he finished making the bed, he'd totally forgotten the other stuff. For those of you who are grandparents and not just parents, that's also a normal thing that happens with aging, which sometimes scares us to death because we think it might be dementia, but it's not. It's just your working memory gets a little weaker with age. With ADHD, it came with a weak working memory. So you've got to have procedures in place to make up for that. Sometimes writing it down. Sometimes you writing it down and giving them the list. Bring this back to me with a check mark by each one. Okay, make it a game, something like that. And that's one of the things you need to do. Another thing this is a combination of working memory, which should transition to memory, but routines, like you're going to bed routine, you're getting up in the morning routine. Those are typically problem areas in families. What you have to do to make it less of a problem is what I call externalizing the executive function. And that's just a fancy way of saying have some kind of a visual reminder of what needs to be done. And it can be a checklist, can be a vision board is a good example that a lot of people will recognize of externalizing the executive function. You get your plans, whether they're your life plans or your plans for the month or your plans for your vacation. You got it on the wall so you can look at it every time you go by. You think, wait a minute, I'll add that sort of thing. Well, there are also some pre-made things. I have an acquaintance who runs a company that makes what they call easy daisies, which are checklists for bedtime routine and morning routine. And I believe they're little magnets on a metal board. And when you do, when you've brushed your teeth, you move that to the done column. And that helps make routines happen. And once they get so they're doing it all the time, what has happened is that the routine has become a habit. And when it becomes a habit, you don't have to think about it anymore. You just do it automatically. It's like, when you're adults, you have a bedtime routine. You don't think about it very much. You just do the same thing all the time. And, when you start thinking again, you realize, oh, yeah, I'm all ready to go get into bed. As you get a little older and they add more medical devices to your routine, it may take a little longer. But that's the basic thing you're doing with your ADHD kid is getting a routine down. Routines, when rehearsed, become habits. And until it's a habit, you want it on the wall where you can, check, where am I? Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot that one. And, that kind of thing. That's a real important part of helping make the routine of bedtime and getting up in the morning a little more, a little less stressful. Let's put it that way. Okay. So one of the biggest things I think we need to talk about that parents of ADHD kids particularly need to do is you have to train in resilience. Okay, resilience is not seeing things as failures, but seeing things as opportunities to learn. And I know that sounds a little la la la, but what we're talking about is that ADHD, particularly, they're going to make more mistakes than average. Okay, that's just part of the deal. Their brain's running 90 miles an hour, and most of life is not designed to be run at 90 miles an hour. So there are mistakes. So if mistakes are an opportunity to shame yourself, that's not a good thing. It's not a useful thing. Being able to look at what happened and say, oh, okay, what can we learn from this? How can I do this better next time? Then that's resilience. And that is also one of the most important things to learn to be successful in life for all of us. I mean, not just ADHD people, but neurotypicals as well. If you're resilient, you can handle it. When you don't have a good opening when you open your store, or when you do a launch on the internet and thinking you're going to make $100,000 or something, and you end up not selling anything. Or there are lots of things, and you look at the history of most people who are terribly wealthy right now. They've had lots of failures, lots of opportunities to give up and say, oh, this is too tough, I can't do it. But they come back. They are resilient. They say, okay, this didn't work. I'm going to change this and do that this way instead of doing it the other way. And we'll see if that changes anything. But you don't waste time criticizing yourself, being ashamed of yourself, that sort of thing, which, a lot of ADHD kids, that's what they learn. Oh, crap, I screwed up again. Oh, darn, I wish I didn't make all these mistakes all the time. You don't want that kind of an internal dialogue going on with your ADHD child. You want him or her to say, okay, this didn't work the way I wanted it to. I wonder what I could have done differently. I wonder what would have made that better. That's what you want. It's a problem-solving focus. It's not, you don't waste time chastising yourself. You go right after what the goal is. You stay focused on the goal, and anything that detracts from the goal, you don't pay too much attention to, and you can learn from mistakes. And failures are only, what is that cliche? Failures are only failures when you quit. And that's what you have to train your ADHD child. That's the way you've got to see him or her to want them to see the world. So these are some things that have worked well for patients of mine. And I think, well, you apply them, they will work for you, and it won't be all about yelling and screaming and punishing and all that sort of thing all the while. Okay, that's the biggie. So, all right, my website is terrygingrassphd.com. I am a coach. I coach with ADHD a lot, and I've got an opening right now if you want to consider getting involved in coaching. You can get me on Calendly. Just go to my website, and it'll refer you to Calendly, which is this deal where you can sign up for an intake, and the intakes are free. We'll just kind of see what the problems are, and maybe whether we can stand each other or not. Okay, so we will catch you next time. In the meantime, remember, let's do all we can to make the world safe for ADHD. We'll catch you later.